But don't we see in these developing nations, and I agree with most of your basic premises, is that I mean I'm not a liberal who subscribes to the idea of free trade or fair trade. Sorry, buying fair trade coffee or buying fair trade jeans, or even the type of person who buys in America. Because I would agree with you that it's good to increase trade and to make sure that globalization, in fact, brings people out of poverty. I agree with most of your basic premises, but don't you feel that, or don't you can you at least acknowledge that these nations, as they develop, will probably build regulatory agencies because that's the only way to really stop things like this? I mean, it's understood that at the industrializing level, you will still have places where, like in the United States, for instance, you had child labor, you had coal miners living off of company stores, you had that shirt fire in New York. These sort of instances in early American labor history, you're going to have those instances in these other countries, and won't they eventually adopt sort of Western standards of unionization and regulation?
Yes, I'm sure they will, and that will slow their growth. Just as unions help a certain group of workers who are working now, may get them a slight pay raise, but then the company, because it can't promote the best people because they have to pay everyone the same, it stops growth, and those companies atrophy and die, or at least don't grow as fast as the non-union companies. So which helps workers more? The animal spirits of the creative destruction of capitalism, which creates 1 million new jobs every year in America, helps a lot more people than regulatory agencies trying to step in and pass rules one at a time that apply to everybody.
Last night, Mr. Stossel, you brought up in your speech your beach house and keen use of unchecked big government programs. Could you just briefly explain what you did? I found it quite humorous.
As an example of how government spends too much money doing too many things, I talked about federal flood insurance, and like all these plans, they are well-intended. Oh, the poor people who were hit by the hurricane, the poor people who were hit by the river flooding, they didn't have insurance, we have to help them. And so there's a bailout, and that costs the government a ton of money. And they say, well, let's, instead of the next bailout, let's get everyone to have insurance. But they're not buying it in the free market because, rightly, some insurance company is going to charge you maybe $1,000 to insure your beach mansion. So we're going to create a program called federal flood insurance, and we'll insure it, and then we'll save money on the next bailout. But the result is that they don't price it according to what the real risks are, and it becomes a huge drain on the taxpayers. And one reason is because it encourages people like me to build on the edge of an ocean or on the edge of a river. And I built a beach house in Long Island, New York. It's beautiful. And my father said, are you crazy? It's on the edge of an ocean. And I was able to say, but I can't lose, because there's something called federal flood insurance that will pay for my house if it washes away. And it did wash away, and the government paid. So thank you. You paid. I never invited you there, but you paid for my beach house. And that's the kind of thing government keeps doing more of. They never repeal any laws. They only pass more, and this insanity results.
All right, switching gears a little bit, we're going to ask you a brief question about some presidential supporters of, in this case, of Ron Paul. They've lashed out at you as a minion of the corporate elites at ABC, and they said your interview with Ron Paul was not aired. They feel you did not work to air that interview. They believe that there's a corporate bias against Ron Paul. What do you think of the Ron Paul supporters and his candidacy?
Well, I like him, and I like his candidacy. It's nice to have a libertarian alternative running for president. The people who are upset with me, I don't blame them. I wish we had run it on 2020 as well instead of just on the Internet. But I have bosses, and my bosses say that we're not going to put anything on unless 8 million people will watch, because if 8 million people don't watch, they're going to cancel us, and then we're not going to put anything on. And by and large, people don't watch politics. And 2020 hasn't put on John McCain either, or Hillary Clinton. I think as the campaign goes closer to November, that we will put on the nominees because interest will be higher there. But that's just a commercial decision of my boss, and the people who are mad at me are right when they say I didn't fight that hard, because I know the reality of it. If my boss doesn't want to put it on, I can't get it on.
And ironically, though, when the video was put online, there were millions of views, and now there are even millions more views on YouTube, and there was plenty of interest in that for a libertarian voice. Well, Mr. Stossel, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your work. Again, pick up his books, any of his books, most recently Myths, Lies, and Downright Stupidity. I believe, do you have a special coming up, sir, you'd like to plug?
Sure. This Friday we're going to talk about what should the age of consent be. We're going to talk about the kids who get locked up for sleeping with their girlfriend when he's 19 and maybe she's 16 and she's underage, and how they get put on the sex offender list for the rest of their lives, even if they get married later. And all next week we do the whole show on that, on the age of consent.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Stossel, for your time. You have a nice day, sir.
Thank you, Joe.
All right, and thank you all for listening to The Boiling Point.
Tune in next Thursday, 1 o'clock. We have a very special guest, U.S. House Minority Leader John Boehner. We have some really good questions we're going to put to him. We really encourage you to listen. This is Tenacious Tex Joseph Dozier signing out.